This story is titled, I've been supporting my family financially and donating to charity for years. But my parents demanded I stop giving to charity, which deeply offended me, so I cut off all their financial support. Hey Reddit, my name is Marcus, and I'm 27 years old. I work as a crane operator and run a small construction business on the side. I've been busting my ass since I was 16, starting with construction work during summer breaks from high school. The moment I turned 18, I got my CDL and worked my way up to operating the big machines. It's good money if you're willing to work for it, and I've been pulling in decent cash between my day job and side business. The thing about construction work is that it teaches you real fast about the value of money and hard work. You're up at 5 a.m. and on site by 6:30. You work in all kinds of weather, rain, snow, blazing summer heat that makes you feel like you're melting. Your hands get calloused, your back aches constantly, and every single dollar you earn represents actual sweat and effort. When you're running a $200,000 crane and one mistake could cost thousands in damage, you learn to be precise, careful, and responsible with everything you do. I started my side business 3 years ago with a used mini excavator I bought at auction. I spent my weekends doing small residential jobs, digging foundations, clearing brush, installing drainage systems. Slowly but surely, I built up a reputation for quality work and fair pricing. I reinvested every penny back into better equipment, insurance, and licensing. It was the American dream in action, you know? Work hard, save money, and build something real that belongs to you. Now let me introduce you to my wonderful family. First up is Tyler, my 30-year-old older brother and the designated golden child of our family. Tyler claims he's a web design consultant, but really he just makes shitty websites for local businesses and charges way too much for them. On a good month, he might have 3 clients. Somehow, though, he always has money for expensive clothes and eating out every night. He lives in a condo he can't afford and drives a Camaro SS that's way above his pay grade. Tyler has this particular way of talking about his business that makes it sound like he's running the next Google. He throws around terms like conversion optimization and customer acquisition funnels with complete confidence. But when you actually look at his work, it's just basic WordPress templates with stock photos. His idea of market research is scrolling through Instagram for inspiration. His biggest client pays him $800 a month for a website that probably took him 6 hours to build using a template he bought online. The really infuriating part is how he carries himself. Designer jeans, expensive sneakers, always talking about his meetings and strategy sessions. He has this leather messenger bag that probably cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. He carries it to coffee shops where he sits with his laptop, pretending to work but actually playing mobile games. The whole performance is so carefully crafted that you'd think he was some kind of tech mogul instead of a guy who struggles to maintain 3 small business websites. Next, we have Isabella, my 24-year-old baby sister and the resident princess of our family. She's one of those lifestyle influencers on Instagram and TikTok, constantly posting videos of her morning routine with expensive coffee and workout clothes that she never actually works out in. She has maybe 15,000 followers who think she's living the dream, but her content creation brings in maybe $300 a month from sponsorships. Despite this pathetic income, she calls herself an entrepreneur while living in a downtown loft that costs more than most people's entire salary. Isabella's whole personality is completely curated for social media. Every single conversation starts with, "Oh my God, this is so going on my story." She'll spend 20 minutes setting up the perfect shot of her breakfast, complete with ring light and 3 different camera angles, then barely eat the food because she's too busy editing the video afterward. Her apartment is basically a movie set, everything arranged for maximum Instagram appeal. Plants positioned just right, throw pillows fluffed to perfection, and books on her shelf that she's never read, organized by color rather than subject. She spends entire days creating content that's supposed to inspire other people to live their best life, but she's never actually lived any of it herself. Those workout clothes she wears in her fitness posts, they still have the tags on them. The expensive skincare products she promotes, she gets them free from companies hoping for exposure to her modest following. The motivational quotes she posts over sunset photos, she screenshots them from Pinterest while sitting on her couch eating takeout in yesterday's pajamas. Then there are Linda and Robert, Mom and Dad. Mom used to work as a receptionist, but she quit when Dad got what she calls his big promotion. Spoiler alert, it wasn't that big. Now she spends her days going to yoga classes and wine tastings, acting like she's some kind of socialite in our medium-sized Tampa area. Dad works in logistics management and makes decent money, but you'd think he was running a Fortune 500 company the way he acts about it. Both of them are completely obsessed with keeping up appearances. Linda's transformation from working receptionist to lady of leisure happened gradually over several months. First, she started taking longer lunch breaks for yoga classes. Then, she was leaving work early for appointments that were really just shopping trips. When Dad got his promotion, which came with a whopping $8,000 raise, she decided it was time to focus on herself and quit her job entirely. Her daily routine became this elaborate performance of affluence. Morning yoga class at an expensive studio downtown, followed by organic juice bar smoothies that cost $12 each. Lunch dates with other unemployed wives where they'd split appetizers and complain about their busy schedules. Afternoon wine tastings at the local vineyard where she'd take selfies with her glass and talk about developing her palate. The whole thing was like watching someone cosplay as a wealthy housewife. Robert enabled all of this by pretending his middle management job was more important than it actually was. He'd come home talking about quarterly projections and strategic initiatives, like he was a CEO instead of a guy who managed truck routes. He started wearing expensive suits to work, leased a truck that was completely impractical for his needs, and joined a golf club where the membership fee was more than some people's rent. The worst part was how they talked about my work when people asked what their kids did. They'd mentioned Tyler's web design business and Isabella's content creation career with obvious pride. When they got to me, it was always, "Marcus works construction," said in the same tone you'd use to describe an unfortunate medical condition. This whole mess started about 5 years ago when Dad got restructured at his previous job. He spun it as a promotion when he found new work, but I later found out he was actually unemployed for 3 months, and they nearly lost the house. Around the same time, Tyler had one of his many business failures. Something about dropshipping that went absolutely nowhere. Meanwhile, Isabella was in college racking up credit card debt, buying clothes for her Instagram account. The dropshipping thing was peak Tyler behavior. He'd seen some YouTube video about making millions selling Chinese gadgets on Amazon and decided he was going to be the next Jeff Bezos. He spent 3 months setting up his business, which consisted of copying product listings and hoping someone would buy overpriced phone cases. He made maybe $200 total before realizing that actual business requires actual work and commitment. During Dad's unemployment period, the family's financial house of cards started collapsing spectacularly. The mortgage was 2 months behind, credit cards were maxed out, and Mom was still going to her yoga classes because she needed stress relief during this difficult time. That's when they discovered I had money saved up. Instead of cutting back on expenses or, God forbid, getting actual jobs that matched their skill levels, they all just started looking at me with those expectant eyes. It started small and seemingly innocent. "Hey Marcus, can you help with groceries this week?" Or, "The car needs new tires, mind spotting us?" It was always presented as temporary loans that would be paid back as soon as things turned around. Here's the thing though, I wasn't just some construction worker with a steady paycheck. I'd been busting my ass building something bigger than myself. I'd started my excavation business doing small residential jobs on weekends and gradually built up a solid client base. I bought my own equipment, established relationships with suppliers, and was pulling in good money, way more than any of them realized. But instead of buying myself nice things or moving to a better place, I was apparently funding their entire fake middle-class lifestyle without even realizing it. The transition from helping out to becoming their complete financial support system was so gradual that I didn't notice it happening until it was too late. First, it was emergency groceries because money was tight. Then, it was the electric bill because someone forgot to pay it. Then, it was helping with Tyler's rent because his business was just about to take off. Each request came with elaborate explanations and promises of repayment. Mom would cry about how embarrassed she was to ask for help. Dad would pull me aside for man-to-man conversations about family responsibility and how we all need to stick together during tough times. Tyler would show me his latest business plan and explain how this was just a temporary setback before his big breakthrough. Isabella would promise to pay me back from her next big sponsorship deal that was supposedly right around the corner. The loans quickly turned into regular payments that they all came to expect. Tyler needed help with his condo payments every month. Isabella's credit cards were constantly maxed out again. Mom wanted to renovate the kitchen to improve the home's value. Dad's car broke down, and instead of buying something reasonable and reliable, he wanted to lease a new truck to maintain his professional image. Every single time they came to me with some sob story about how it was just temporary, just this once, just until they got back on their feet. But here's what really got to me. They never adjusted their lifestyle. Not once. Instead of canceling the golf membership or yoga classes, instead of moving to cheaper places or buying reasonable cars, they just kept living the same expensive life and expecting me to cover the difference. I kept every receipt, every Venmo transaction, every text message asking for money. 5 years of documentation showing exactly how much I'd poured into keeping these people comfortable while I lived like a broke college student. My apartment was a studio with secondhand furniture. My truck was 10 years old with 200,000 miles on it. I wore the same work clothes until they literally fell apart. Meanwhile, they were living like they'd won the lottery. So it's April 8th, my 27th birthday. Mom posts in our family group chat, "Marcus's birthday dinner Thursday. Where should we go? Let me know." For like 30 seconds, I actually got excited. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd remember I hate seafood, or pick that Brazilian steakhouse I'd mentioned wanting to try. Maybe someone would actually ask what I wanted to do for my birthday. I'd been dropping hints for weeks about places I wanted to go. I mentioned the new BBQ place that got great reviews, talked about wanting to try that hibachi restaurant that opened downtown. Hell, I would have been happy with a decent burger joint. Anything that showed they'd put 5 minutes of thought into what I might actually enjoy. Then the replies started rolling in, and my heart sank. Tyler, let's keep it cheap. Save the nice restaurants for real celebrations. Isabella, OMG, yes, LOL. Chili's has those $1 drinks this month. Mom hearted both messages. Dad, sounds good. 7 p.m. Thursday. That was it. Not one person asked what I wanted. Not one person suggested somewhere I might actually enjoy. They just assumed I'd be thrilled to celebrate my birthday at fucking Chili's while they made jokes about not wasting money on me. The real celebrations comment hit me like a punch to the gut. What constituted a real celebration in this family? Tyler's birthday last year was at a steakhouse that cost $60 per person. Isabella's birthday was at some trendy fusion place where the appetizers alone cost more than a Chili's entree. But my birthday? Better keep it cheap. I should have said something right then. Should have told them exactly what I thought about their plan. But like always, I just went along with it because that's what family does, right? The group chat kept going throughout the week, but it was all logistics. What time? Who's driving? Should we call ahead for a table? Nobody asked if I wanted to invite friends. Nobody mentioned getting a cake. Nobody seemed to remember that birthdays are supposed to be about celebrating the person having the birthday. Thursday night, I showed up to this depressing chain restaurant with sticky floors and overworked servers who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The whole family was already there, halfway through a shared appetizer platter, looking bored out of their minds. No decorations, no surprise, just my Uncle Frank giving me a half-hearted, "Hey, birthday boy," while he scrolled through his phone. The energy was about the same as a mandatory work meeting. The restaurant was exactly what you'd expect from a Tuesday night at Chili's. Fluorescent lighting that made everyone look sick, sticky menus covered in pictures of food that looked nothing like what they actually served, and that distinctive smell of reheated frozen food mixed with industrial disinfectant. I sat down and tried to make the best of it, ordered my food, made small talk, and pretended like this was totally normal, and I wasn't disappointed that my own family couldn't be bothered to put in any real effort for my birthday. The conversation was the usual bullshit. Tyler talking about his latest big opportunity that was definitely going to make him rich this time. Something about cryptocurrency and NFTs that he clearly didn't understand, but was convinced would be his ticket to wealth. Isabella showing everyone her latest TikTok video that had gotten like so many views. It was 847 views, which she mentioned 3 times during dinner. Mom complained about her yoga instructor changing the class schedule and how inconsiderate it was to people with established routines. Dad explained why his new truck was actually a smart financial decision because of tax write-offs and fuel efficiency, completely ignoring the fact that he drove it maybe 20 miles a day to sit in an office. Nobody asked about my work, my life, anything about me. I was just there taking up space at their table while they talked about themselves. When I tried to mention that I just landed a big commercial job that would keep me busy for the next 6 months, Tyler interrupted to talk about how he was pivoting his business model to focus on B2B solutions. The food was terrible, as expected. My burger was overcooked and dry, the fries were cold, and everything tasted like it had been sitting under heat lamps for hours. But nobody seemed to care about the food quality. They were all too busy talking about themselves to notice we were eating garbage. After dinner came present time, and it was exactly as disappointing as I'd expected. Most of the family gave me gift cards to places I never shop, or just straight up didn't bring anything at all. Uncle Frank handed me a $25 Lowe's card with a joke about how I could buy some real tools. Mom gave me a Starbucks card because she assumed I drank coffee. I don't. Dad didn't bring anything but promised to take care of it later. He never did. But then Tyler pulled out this envelope with this shit-eating grin on his face, like he was about to deliver the joke of the century. "This one's from all of us," he said, sliding it across the table with obvious satisfaction. The envelope was cheap drugstore quality, the kind you grab from the rack by the checkout counter when you realize you forgot to buy a card. Inside was a birthday card, one of those generic ones from the grocery store that probably cost 99 cents. The front had some lame joke about getting older, with a cartoon character I didn't recognize. But when I opened it up, someone had written in blue ink below the printed message, "Maybe next year you'll have something worth celebrating. Keep grinding, little bro. Your loving family." I stared at that card for probably a full minute, reading it over and over again, trying to process what the fuck I was looking at. My brain couldn't compute it at first. Was this supposed to be motivational? Was it a joke? Was this seriously what they thought of me? The handwriting was Tyler's. I recognized his sloppy scrawl from years of birthday cards and thank you notes he'd been forced to write as a kid. But the "from all of us" part meant they'd all seen this message and agreed it was appropriate. They'd all thought this was funny or inspiring, or whatever twisted logic had convinced them this was okay. Then I looked up and saw Tyler smirking like he'd just delivered the burn of the century. Isabella was giggling behind her phone, probably already thinking about how she'd post about family dinner vibes on her story. Mom and Dad were nodding along like this was the most clever thing they'd ever seen. That's when it hit me like a freight train. They weren't joking. This wasn't some misguided attempt at motivation. This was genuinely how my family saw me. As someone who hadn't accomplished anything worth celebrating. A guy who makes decent money but doesn't have anything real to show for it in their eyes. Let me paint you a picture of the irony here. This motivational message was coming from Tyler, who hasn't had a real job in 2 years and lives off credit cards and my money. From Isabella, whose biggest accomplishment is getting 20,000 views on a video of her making avocado toast. From parents who needed me to co-sign their mortgage refinance because their credit was fucked. But somehow, I'm the one who needs to keep grinding, and maybe next year I'll have something worth celebrating. The rage that built up inside me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It wasn't just anger. It was this cold, crystalline fury that seemed to sharpen my thinking instead of clouding it. Years of swallowing my pride, years of being treated like the family failure, years of watching them live off my money while treating me like garbage. It all came together in that moment. I felt this white-hot rage building up inside me, but I kept my face completely neutral. Years of dealing with their bullshit had taught me how to hide my emotions. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the cards sitting on the table, with their smiling faces in the background. "Thanks for the motivation," I said, my voice completely flat. I stood up, left a $20 bill on the table for my food, and walked out without another word. Nobody followed me. Nobody called out to ask where I was going. They just let me leave like it was totally normal to humiliate someone on their birthday and then act surprised when they don't stick around for cake. I sat in my truck in the parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at that photo on my phone. The card, the shitty restaurant, their faces laughing at their own cruel joke. Something fundamental shifted in me that night. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done. Done being their safety net. Done being treated like the family failure. Done pretending this was normal. That's when I started planning their complete financial destruction. Here's what my wonderful family didn't know. While they were busy treating me like their personal bailout fund, I'd been building something they couldn't even comprehend. You see, about 4 years ago when Dad lost his job and Tyler's latest business venture crashed and burned, I didn't just step in with emergency loans. I quietly took over their entire financial life because none of them were responsible enough to handle money on their own. It started with the mortgage. When Dad couldn't qualify for refinancing with his shit credit score, the bank needed someone with good credit to co-sign. That someone was me. I wasn't just helping with payments. I was legally co-owner of their precious suburban house. The bank meeting was a masterclass in financial incompetence. Dad showed up in his expensive suit, acting like he was doing them a favor by considering their mortgage products. The loan officer took one look at his credit report and debt-to-income ratio and basically laughed him out of the room. That's when they called me. "Marcus, we need your help with something. It's just a formality." Some formality. It made me legally responsible for a $340,000 mortgage on a house I didn't live in, for people who had already proven they couldn't manage money. Then it was the utilities. Dad kept forgetting to pay the electric bill, so I just had it transferred to my account. Same with gas, water, internet, and trash pickup. It was easier to just handle it myself than deal with constant service shutoffs because they were too disorganized to remember due dates. The utility situation was a complete joke. I'd get panicked calls about the power being shut off because someone forgot to pay the bill. Not couldn't afford it, forgot to pay it. These are adults in their 50s who couldn't manage to pay bills on time, so I took over everything, set up autopay from my accounts, and eliminated the drama. The subscriptions came next. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, Family Plan, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, HBO Max. I was paying for all of it. Mom's expensive skincare subscription boxes, Dad's golf app, Tyler's Adobe Creative Suite that he used maybe twice a month. Everything was connected to my credit card. It wasn't just the big stuff either. I was paying for their individual subscription boxes, their meal kit deliveries, their premium dating app memberships. Yes, even though they were married, they both had dating apps for networking. The monthly charges added up to hundreds of dollars for services I never used, but it was easier than listening to them complain about not being able to afford their little luxuries. But the really expensive stuff was the emergencies that became regular occurrences. Tyler's condo rent was $2,400 a month, and I'd been covering about $800 of it for 18 months. Isabella's downtown loft was $2,800 per month, and I was covering $2,200 because her influencer income was basically non-existent. Tyler's Camaro lease was $650 a month. Isabella's Audi lease was $580 per month. The family grocery budget was $400 to $600 per month because they only shopped at Whole Foods. Mom's yoga studio membership was $180 per month. Dad's golf club dues were $300 per month. I also covered Tyler's business loan payments when his dropshipping thing failed, $400 a month. Isabella's credit card minimums when she maxed them out buying designer clothes, $800 to $200 per month depending on her shopping sprees. And their health insurance premiums when Dad's new job didn't kick in benefits for 90 days. Another few hundred monthly. The business loan thing still makes me laugh. Tyler had convinced some online lender to give him $15,000 for his e-commerce venture. The loan had an 18% interest rate and a payment plan that assumed he'd be making thousands in profit within the first month. When reality hit and he made about $200 total, guess who got stuck with the payments? Isabella's credit card situation was even worse. She had 5 different cards, all maxed out, all with different payment schedules and interest rates. She'd gotten them by claiming her social media presence was a business and inflating her income on the applications. When the minimum payments added up to more than her actual income, guess who became her personal bailout fund? All told, I was spending about $12,000 to $15,000 per month, keeping their lifestyle afloat. In 4 years, I'd pumped over $600,000 into their lives while living in a basic studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old truck. Let me put that in perspective. $600,000 is enough to buy a decent house in cash. It's enough to start a real business. It's enough to retire early if invested properly. Instead, I spent it keeping 4 adults in designer clothes and fancy restaurants, while they treated me like their personal ATM. And what did I get for it? A birthday card telling me I hadn't accomplished anything worth celebrating. But here's the beautiful part. I had documentation for everything. Bank statements, Venmo records, text message threads, email confirmations. 4 years of evidence showing exactly how much money I'd invested in keeping these ungrateful parasites comfortable. I'd started keeping records initially just for tax purposes, since some of the business expenses could be written off. But as the amounts grew larger and their attitudes grew worse, those records became something else entirely. They became evidence of just how much these people had taken from me while giving nothing back. Monday after my birthday disaster, I started making phone calls. The first call was to the mortgage company. As co-signer, I had the right to request removal from the loan. They explained that the other parties would have 30 days to either refinance without me or the property would go into foreclosure proceedings. The customer service rep was surprisingly helpful. She explained that co-signer removal was a standard process, but it required the remaining borrowers to qualify for the loan on their own. Given Dad's credit score and current debt situation, she was skeptical about their chances. "Sir, I have to ask, are you sure you want to do this? Once we start the process, there's no going back. If the other parties can't qualify for refinancing, the property will go into foreclosure." "I'm sure," I told her. "Send me the paperwork." With Dad's credit score hovering around 580 and no real assets to speak of, refinancing wasn't going to happen. But I wasn't ready to drop that bomb yet. Next, I called every utility company, subscription service, and creditor that had my information attached to their accounts. This took an entire day, hours on hold, being transferred between departments, explaining that I wanted to remove my payment information and cancel services. The Netflix customer service rep seemed confused. "Sir, you're canceling a family plan that has 5 active users. Are you sure about this?" "Positive. Cancel everything associated with my account." Some of the cancellations were immediate. Others had billing cycles that would run for another few weeks. But by the end of the day, I'd systematically removed myself from every single service I'd been paying for on their behalf. The subscription boxes were particularly satisfying to cancel. Mom's skincare box that cost $200 a month, gone. Dad's monthly golf accessories shipment, canceled. Tyler's software subscriptions that he barely used, terminated. But I saved the best for last. I called Tyler's landlord. See, when Tyler moved into his fancy condo, he didn't have the income to qualify on his own. So guess who co-signed that lease? The same lease that I'd been essentially paying for the past 18 months while he pretended to run a successful business. The landlord was a no-nonsense guy named Tony, who owned several properties in the area. When I explained that I wanted to remove myself as guarantor, he wasn't surprised. "Honestly, I was wondering when this call would come," he said. "Your brother hasn't paid his full rent on time once in the past year. It's always partial payments and promises about the rest coming later." I gave them 30 days notice that I was removing myself as guarantor and would no longer be responsible for any payments. After that, it was all on Tyler and his $400 a month web design income. Tuesday morning, my phone started buzzing. Tyler: "Dude, what's wrong with Netflix? It's saying the account is canceled." Isabella: "My Spotify isn't working and I have a brand event tonight." Mom: "The internet is down. Can you call the company?" Dad: "Marcus, call me ASAP. There's some issue with all our accounts." I didn't respond to any of them. I just watched the messages pile up as they slowly realized their comfortable little world was starting to crumble. The messages kept coming throughout the day, increasingly frantic texts about various services being disconnected, emails being sent to their addresses about canceled subscriptions, and general confusion about what was happening. By Tuesday afternoon, they'd figured out that it wasn't a series of coincidences or technical glitches. Someone had systematically canceled everything, and there was only one person with access to all those accounts. By Wednesday, the group chat was in full panic mode. Mom: "Marcus, this is serious. The bank called about the mortgage." Dad: "Son, we need to talk immediately." Tyler: "My landlord just called me freaking out about something. What did you do?" Isabella: "Marcus, why aren't you answering anyone? We need your help." I still didn't respond. I was at work, operating a crane, building a retaining wall for a client who was paying me $8,000 for the job. I was doing actual productive work while my family discovered what it felt like when their safety net disappeared. The job was perfect therapy. Nothing like running heavy machinery to clear your head and focus on something real. The client was a small business owner who needed a retaining wall to expand his parking lot. Real work, real results, real money earned through actual effort. Between the physical work and watching my phone blow up with increasingly desperate messages, I felt better than I had in years. For the first time, I was the one in control. They needed me, and I wasn't available. Thursday morning, I woke up to 43 missed calls and about 20 voicemails. The voicemails were pure gold. Mom crying: "Marcus, honey, I don't understand what's happening. The bank is saying terrible things about foreclosure and I'm so scared. Please call me back." Dad trying to sound authoritative: "Son, I don't know what point you're trying to make, but this is serious. We could lose everything. Stop being childish and fix this." Tyler panicked: "Bro, my landlord is losing his shit saying you're off my lease." "What the fuck? I can't afford this place without you. Just call me back, man." Isabella in full meltdown: "Marcus, I'm literally about to be homeless. My rent is due tomorrow and my account is like $200. You have to help me. I'll do anything." That last one made me smile. I'll do anything. When what she really meant was, I'll promise to be nicer until this blows over and then go back to treating you like garbage. But I still wasn't ready to reveal my hand completely. I wanted them to suffer a little longer. They'd spent years making me feel like the family shit, and now it was their turn to panic. Friday evening, they all showed up at my apartment. Every single one of them, including my Uncle Frank, who I barely talked to. It was like some kind of delusional intervention where they thought surrounding me would somehow fix everything. I watched through my window as they gathered in the parking lot, clearly strategizing about their approach. Dad was doing most of the talking, gesturing with his hands like he was giving a pep talk to his sales team. Mom looked like she'd been crying for days. Tyler and Isabella both looked like they hadn't slept in a week. When they knocked on my door, I took my time answering. I let them stand there for a few minutes while I finished my beer and mentally prepared for whatever bullshit they were about to throw at me. Dad did most of the talking, using that patronizing tone he'd perfected over the years. Son, we've all been talking, and we think you're having some kind of breakdown. This isn't like you. You've always been the reliable one. Reliable, I repeated. Interesting word choice. Marcus, we love you, Mom chimed in, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Money isn't everything. We're family. The fake tears were a nice touch. The same performance she'd used to get money out of me dozens of times before. The slight tremor in her voice, the way she looked down at just the right moment, the tissue dabbing that was more for show than actually wiping away tears. Mom, when's the last time any of you called me just to see how I was doing? Not because you needed money, not because something was broken, just to talk? There was silence. Long, uncomfortable silence, while they all looked at each other like they were hoping someone else would come up with an answer. When's the last time anyone in this room asked about my job, my goals, my life? Anything about me that wasn't related to what I could do for you? More silence, because the answer was never. In 5 years of funding their lifestyle, not one of them had ever shown genuine interest in my life beyond my ability to solve their financial problems. Tyler tried to jump in with some bullshit about family loyalty, but I shut him down fast. Tyler, in the past 18 months I've given you $47,000. When's the last time you said thank you? His face went white. He'd never added up the numbers, never realized exactly how much money had flowed from my accounts to his. In his mind, it was just random help here and there, not a systematic transfer of wealth. How do you… we're family, man. You don't keep score with family. You're right, family doesn't keep score, but you're not family. You're parasites, and I'm done feeding you. The word parasites hit them like a physical blow. I could see it in their faces, shock, anger, and maybe just a hint of recognition that there might be some truth to it. Isabella started crying. Real tears this time, not the fake ones she used when she wanted something. Marcus, I didn't know you were paying for so much stuff. I thought Mom and Dad were just being generous. Isabella, where did you think their money was coming from? Dad makes decent money and Mom doesn't work. Your rent alone is $33,600 annually. She didn't have an answer because she'd never thought about it. None of them had. They just assumed money appeared whenever they needed it, like it was some kind of natural law of the universe. The math was simple, but they'd never bothered to do it. Dad's take-home pay after taxes was maybe $4,500 a month. Their mortgage, car payments, and basic expenses ate up most of that. Where did they think the extra $12,000 a month for their lifestyle upgrades was coming from? Uncle Frank, who'd been quiet this whole time, finally spoke up. Marcus, I don't know all the details here, but these people raised you. That has to count for something. I looked at this man who showed up to maybe 20% of family gatherings and acted like he understood our dynamic. Uncle Frank, they raised me to be their personal ATM. Every conversation we've had for the past 4 years has been about money. Every family gathering ends with someone asking me to cover something. My own birthday celebration was at Chili's because they said I wasn't worth spending real money on. What exactly should I be grateful for? Uncle Frank shifted uncomfortably. He'd come here thinking he was going to talk sense into a confused young man, but he was starting to realize the situation was more complicated than he'd been told. Dad tried to regain control of the conversation. Son, you're being dramatic. We've never said you weren't worth… I have the birthday card, Dad. The one where you all told me maybe next year I'll have something worth celebrating, while you were literally living off my money. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photo. The card, their smiling faces, the shitty restaurant where they thought it was appropriate to humiliate me. The room went dead quiet. Nobody had expected me to have documented their cruelty. In their minds, it was just a joke, just family teasing that would be forgotten by the next day. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You have 22 days to figure out the mortgage situation before the bank starts foreclosure proceedings. Tyler, you have until the end of the month to find a new place you can actually afford, or find someone else stupid enough to co-sign your lease. Isabella, same deal with your loft. I'm not paying for any of it anymore. Marcus, please, Mom begged. We'll lose everything. No, you'll lose the fake lifestyle I was funding. You'll still have each other. You'll just have to live within your actual means. The word fake hung in the air like a slap, because that's exactly what it was. A completely artificial lifestyle built on someone else's money and maintained through manipulation and guilt. What about family loyalty? Dad asked, his voice getting desperate. What about everything we've done for you? What have you done for me, Dad? Specifically, I want examples. Another long silence, because when you stripped away the guilt trips and emotional manipulation, they hadn't actually done anything for me as an adult. I'd been giving and they'd been taking, and somehow they'd convinced themselves that was a normal family dynamic. We raised you, Mom said weakly. You raised me to work construction while you live off my paycheck. You raised me to be grateful for scraps while I fund your champagne lifestyle. You raised me to think this was normal. They filed out like beaten dogs, and I locked the door behind them. For the first time in years, my apartment felt peaceful. After I cut off the financial support, everything collapsed beautifully. Tyler got evicted within 2 weeks when he couldn't cover his $2,400 rent alone. He moved back in with his parents, loading his expensive furniture into a U-Haul while his Camaro sat with a repo notice on the windshield. Isabella lasted slightly longer by manipulating some lonely engineer she met on a dating app into paying her rent. But when month 2 came around and she had no backup plan, she also crawled back home. Their social media presence crumbled along with their finances. Tyler went from posting about his entrepreneurial mindset to complete radio silence. Isabella's Instagram shifted from designer outfits and motivational quotes to depressing posts about focusing on family, as her followers realized her lifestyle was completely fake. The family group chat became my personal entertainment. Dad picked up weekend shifts at Lowe's to make ends meet. Mom started selling furniture for a fraction of what they'd paid for it. Both kids were begging for entry-level jobs they'd previously mocked as beneath them. When Tyler called 3 weeks later, desperate and practically shaking, admitting they'd fucked up and begging me not to let them lose the house, I reminded him of his cruel birthday card message and hung up. The house sold at auction for $385,000. They moved into a 900-square-foot apartment in a much less desirable part of town. Tyler got a 16-an-hour call center job where he had to follow scripts instead of pretending to be a creative genius. Isabella started working part-time at Target, folding clothes and dealing with customers who didn't care about her social media following. Both parents took retail jobs to survive, the same kind of work they'd always looked down on. 6 months later, I bought my own house, a real house that I owned outright, not some leveraged fantasy that required someone else's income to maintain. I started taking vacations to Colorado with money I finally got to keep instead of pouring into other people's fake lifestyles. My excavation business grew exponentially without the burden of supporting 4 other people. I was able to invest in better equipment, take on larger contracts, and actually build something meaningful for my future. Last week, I saw Dad at the grocery store. He looked older, but somehow more genuine than he had in years. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by simple work clothes that actually fit his new reality. We made awkward small talk for a few minutes, and then something unexpected happened. He admitted they'd taken advantage of me. He said the birthday card was cruel and completely out of line. When he asked if I was happy, I honestly answered yes. The difference in my life was night and day. I went home to my house, my actual house, where nobody treats me like a walking ATM. No one demands money for rent they can't afford or asks me to cover their credit card bills from shopping sprees they couldn't justify. No one expects me to fund their lifestyle while they mock my career and treat me like the family disappointment. For the first time in years, I was living for myself. Every dollar I earned stayed in my accounts unless I chose to spend it on something I actually wanted. I could take time off without worrying about covering someone else's expenses. I could make plans without wondering which family member would have a financial emergency that somehow became my responsibility. The peace of mind was incredible. No more panicked texts about shut-off utilities. No more guilt trips about family loyalty while they lived off my generosity. No more watching people spend my money on luxuries I couldn't afford for myself. No more birthday celebrations at chain restaurants while they saved the real celebrations for each other. My phone stopped buzzing with constant requests for money. My weekends weren't interrupted by family emergencies that required immediate financial intervention. I could focus on my work, grow my business, and actually enjoy the fruits of my labor instead of watching other people enjoy them while contributing nothing in return. Looking back, I realize how long I'd been enabling their irresponsible behavior. By constantly bailing them out, I'd removed any incentive for them to change or take responsibility for their choices. They never had to face the consequences of their spending because I was always there to catch them when they fell. In trying to help my family, I'd actually been hurting them by preventing them from learning to manage their own lives. The forced reality check did them good in the end. Tyler finally got a real job with steady income instead of chasing get-rich-quick schemes. Isabella learned what actual work looked like instead of pretending that posting selfies was a career. Mom and Dad had to confront their spending habits and live within their means like responsible adults. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel guilty about letting them lose the house, but then I remember that it was never really their house to begin with. They couldn't afford it without my co-signature, couldn't maintain it without my monthly contributions, and showed no appreciation for the sacrifice I was making to keep them comfortable. They took my generosity for granted and treated me like garbage in return. The birthday card sits framed on my desk now, not as a reminder of their cruelty, but as a reminder of my worth. They were wrong. I had plenty worth celebrating. A successful business built through hard work, financial independence earned through sacrifice and smart decisions, and the backbone to stand up for myself when I'd been pushed too far. Today, I'm genuinely happy. I have money in the bank, a house I own, and relationships with people who value me for who I am, rather than what I can provide for them. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people is to stop enabling their worst behaviors and let them face the consequences of their choices. Real family doesn't treat each other like personal ATMs, and I'm better off without people who only see me as a source of funding for their fantasies.